Paige Tanner was 34 years old when she finally found out what her family really thought of her. It didn't happen at a party or a holiday dinner. It happened while she was lying in a hospital bed, hurting and alone, staring at fluorescent lights through a haze of pain medication. 6 weeks before that night, she had become a mother to her beautiful little girl, Nora. The baby was so tiny and perfect that Paige sometimes just watched her breathe, amazed that something so small could fill every corner of a room with meaning. One evening, Paige was driving home after working a late shift. The roads were slick and the intersections were busy, and she was thinking about getting home to Nora when a big truck ran a red light at a busy intersection called Colfax. The impact came from the side, sudden and violent, and the next thing Paige knew, she was waking up in the hospital. She had 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung that made every breath feel like swallowing broken glass, and a heavy white cast wrapped around her right arm. The curtains around her bed were thin and blue, and the machines beside her beeped with a rhythm that felt nothing like comfort. Her husband, Daniel, was far away in Seattle for work. It would take him 6 hours just to get home. Someone had to take care of the baby that night. The sitter had already said she needed to leave soon. There was only one obvious solution. Paige's mother lived 20 minutes from the hospital. When Daniel called her to ask for help, she simply said no. She told him one sentence that Paige would never forget. The sentence that became the reason she decided to tell this story to anyone who would listen. She said, "Your sister never has these emergencies." While Paige was hurting in that hospital bed, her sister Megan was having the time of her life on a cruise ship somewhere in the Caribbean. Her mother was sitting in a casino, surrounded by flashing lights and the sound of slot machines. What Paige did from that hospital bed in the next 3 minutes changed everything. It involved 9 years of her life and $486,000. But that wasn't even the part that really upset her family. The part that changed everything happened 3 hours later, when an old man walked through her hospital room door carrying a worn-out folder and said something that no one in her family ever expected to hear out loud. Paige woke from the anesthesia in a small curtained area of the emergency room. The first thing she felt was the heavy weight of the cast on her arm. Her left wrist had a plastic hospital identification band. A nurse was saying her name softly, and her chest felt like someone had parked a car on top of it. Daniel was on the phone right next to her head. His voice sounded flat and careful, the way a person sounds when they are trying very hard not to fall apart. He told her the babysitter had to leave within the hour. He had already called her mom. But Paige already knew the answer. Through the phone, she could hear a strange sound in the background, the cheerful chaos of a casino, bells ringing and music playing while her mother explained why she couldn't come. She said she had to stay home and watch Megan's cat. A cat. Her 6-week-old granddaughter needed her, and the answer was a cat. Paige didn't cry. She wanted people to know that. Most people assume a woman alone in a hospital bed would cry, but she didn't. She looked at the band on her wrist, picked up her phone with her good hand, and started making calls. She had things to do. She was always very good at taking care of things. That had always been the problem. To understand why her family treated her like a machine instead of a person, you had to know who Paige was before that night. She grew up in a small house where the heat didn't always work. She stocked shelves at a grocery store late at night to pay for school. She studied hard and eventually became the person a very large company called when the numbers had to be perfect. She liked numbers because numbers are honest. They don't play favorites or tell you one thing while meaning another. She and Daniel got married when they were 26. They waited to have children because they wanted to be ready, and because someone in Paige's family always seemed to need help first. They lived simply, drove one old car, and carried no debt. That discipline was the only reason she could do what she did next. For 9 years, Paige had been sending her parents $4,500 every single month. She never told anyone, not even Daniel. $2,000 went to her parents directly. $1,100 covered the mortgage on their house. $900 was supposed to pay for her father's heart medication. $500 went to Megan. She told herself it was necessary, that she was the only one strong enough to hold the family together. She thought of herself as the wall that kept everything from collapsing. But that night, lying in the dark with a collapsed lung and a cast on her arm, she learned that being the strong one is not the same as being loved. First, she solved the actual problem. She called a professional overnight nanny service, explained her situation calmly and clearly, and arranged for a nurse named Yvette to go to her house immediately. 40 minutes later, Yvette sent her a photo of Nora sleeping peacefully in her crib, safe and warm. When the hospital nurse asked if she had family coming, Paige told her it was handled and moved on. People get surprised when you don't fall apart. But Paige was just doing what she had always done. She was being the adult. Her baby was safe. Her husband was on a plane. There was only one thing left to do. She opened the banking app on her phone. The screen glowed like a tiny cold moon in the dark room. She scrolled through the list of automatic payments, transfers she knew by heart the way a person knows a scar on their own skin. She pressed the button to cancel the first payment. A green check mark appeared on the screen. Then she canceled the second, the third, and the fourth. It took 20 seconds to end 9 years of financial support. It felt like turning off a faucet. She didn't feel happy or sad. She just felt like the numbers finally matched the reality. Then she noticed something in the transaction history she hadn't seen before. There was a transfer labeled loan for $40,000. It had Megan's name attached to it, not her father's medication. Paige lay in the dark and asked herself why she had done this for so long. People might call it weakness, but it wasn't that. She did it because she believed that if people needed her, she would be safe. She thought that if she held everything up, no one would ever leave her. Her grandmother Ruth had understood this about her. Ruth was a strong woman who always smelled like coffee and spoke in short, clear sentences. Before she died, she told Paige that she needed to be the one watching the family money because her mother wouldn't. Paige had thought she meant she should be generous. Now she understood Ruth had meant she should be careful. Daniel called again from the airport. He told her exactly what her mother had said during their conversation. She had let out a loud, dramatic sigh and explained that Megan was on her dream vacation and the cat couldn't be left alone. Then she said Paige always lands on her feet. Then came the line about Megan never having emergencies, spoken as though the truck that hit Paige should have checked the family schedule first. Daniel's voice cracked as he relayed it. Paige told him to breathe and get on his plane. She checked her sister's social media. Megan was drinking a fancy cocktail by a pool on the cruise ship, captioning her photo about finally living her best life. She was 29 years old and genuinely believed the $500 that appeared in her account every month simply materialized from the universe. Later, Megan called on video chat. She didn't even notice the hospital room behind Paige, the monitors, the IV line, the cast. She just complained that her credit card wasn't working at the ship's spa. She said their mom told her the family account always covered things like that. When Paige asked if she knew about the accident, Megan asked if Paige was being dramatic. She told Paige to fix the card because she had a photo shoot scheduled for the next day. Paige hung up without saying goodbye. Her sister wasn't cruel, exactly. She just had no idea that someone else had been carrying the bucket she was drinking from her entire adult life. Paige sent a short message to her grandfather Harold. She wrote that they needed to talk. He responded almost instantly. The next day, the family group chat exploded. Paige's mother told everyone that Paige had cut them off out of spite and cruelty. She claimed she didn't know how they would pay for her father's medication. She insisted they had always managed on their own. Aunts and cousins chimed in, saying Paige should be ashamed of herself. Paige read every message, but didn't respond. Explaining was the old version of herself. The new version was going to let the numbers speak. Daniel arrived with Nora, and for a while they just sat together and breathed. Then her father called. He sounded genuinely sad and said he didn't know things had gotten this bad. For a moment, Paige almost believed he would stand up for her, but then she heard her mother's sharp voice in the background and he mumbled something and hung up. He was a good man, Paige thought, but a good man too afraid to say anything that mattered. She got her laptop and built a spreadsheet. She traced every dollar she had sent over 9 years. What she found made the hospital room feel even colder. The majority of the money she had designated for the mortgage and her father's medication had actually been withdrawn at casino ATMs. Her mother had been gambling away Paige's money for nearly a decade while telling everyone she was managing the household on her own. Megan had received $120,000 over the years to fund her lifestyle of brunches and vacations and spa treatments. Paige printed one single page that summarized everything. One page for 9 years of sacrifice. Grandfather Harold came to visit her in the hospital. He was carrying the worn-out folder. He sat down beside her bed and told her he knew what had been happening. He said they were going to deal with it in front of the whole family so her mother couldn't hide behind closed doors and whispered phone calls. Then he told Paige something she had never known. Grandma Ruth had not been happy in the months before she died. She knew Paige's mother was spending recklessly. She had spent her final months working with a lawyer. Ruth had placed the family house and the land it sat on into a trust, and she had named Paige and baby Nora as the beneficiaries. Paige's mother didn't own the house anymore. Paige did. When Paige asked Harold why her mother had always treated Megan so much better, he gave her an answer that was painful in its simplicity. Her mother had never been the favorite child growing up. She had been the responsible one, the one who worked hard and got nothing for it. When Paige was born steady and hardworking and reliable, her mother looked at her and saw her own reflection, and she resented it. But Megan was loud and fun and carefree, and through Megan, her mother got to experience what it felt like to be the parent of the golden child. The casino was where her mother went to feel like she could finally win something. Paige understood all of it. Understanding didn't change her decision. She told Daniel her plan. He asked if she could stay calm. She told him she had been calm her entire life. Now she was just going to stop being silent. On Sunday, they went to her parents' house for the weekly family dinner. Paige still wore her cast. Harold came with them, carrying his folder. The whole family was there. Paige's mother started performing immediately, sighing and telling everyone what a terrible week she'd had, how Paige had turned on them for no reason. She looked around the room for sympathy the way she always did. Then she said it again, in front of everyone. That line about Megan never having emergencies. Paige placed her single printed page on the dining room table. She told them all, very quietly, that Megan doesn't have emergencies because Paige had been paying for her life. She showed them the $486,000. She showed them the casino withdrawals. The room went completely silent. Her mother called her a liar. That was when Harold opened his folder. He placed the legal documents on the table beside Paige's spreadsheet. The trust was airtight. Grandma Ruth had made sure of that. The house, the land, everything was in Paige's name. Her mother's face went white. She grabbed at her husband's arm, trying to get him to say something. He whispered that Paige was right. But when his wife turned her eyes on him, he went quiet again. Her mother started making threats about lawyers and courts, but Harold told her the papers were perfect and she couldn't win. Megan sat at the table crying, not because she felt sorry for what Paige had been through, but because she had just realized her easy life was over. Paige didn't say much after that. She placed her hospital identification band on Nora's car seat as a reminder. She told her aunt she trusted her to share the truth with the rest of the family. Then she and Daniel and Nora and Harold walked out the front door. They didn't slam it. They just left. The trust held up. Paige's parents still live in the house because she refuses to put an old man with a heart condition out on the street. But she doesn't send them money anymore. The casino trips are over for her mother. Megan eventually got a real job and is learning what it means to pay for your own life. Paige's father calls her sometimes when he's alone in the house, and she talks to him. They don't say much, but they say enough. Harold moved closer to their neighborhood. He comes over for dinner every Sunday. He brings the folder and sets it on the shelf by the front door, just in case anyone needs a reminder. Paige learned that the people who call you strong are often just the people who don't want to help you. The day she stopped being her family's bank was the day she finally got to be a real mother to her daughter. She stopped pouring herself into adults who refused to grow up and started pouring into the tiny person who actually needed her. That is her story, and she hopes that anyone who hears it will go home tonight and take an honest look at their own life. Check who really shows up when things fall apart. If you are the strong one in your family, know that it is okay to finally put the bucket down.